This episode covers Friday, May 24th, 2024. Day 44 of my scenic detour. Today's meandering took me 281 miles. From Santa Barbara to Carmel-by-the-Sea. While I had hoped for a legendary ride along Big Sur's cliffs, there were two sections of the PCH that were closed today. The first, between Limekiln State Park and Big Sur, had been shut down for more than a year, and as of this recording on June 1st, 2025, it's still closed. To make matters worse, the best alternative for that section, the Nacimiento-Ferguson Road, had been recently hit with over a foot of rain and was impassable. The second closure was a partial collapse near the Rocky Creek Bridge, just 12 miles south of Carmel. Torrential rains a couple weeks ago had taken a bite out of the southbound lane, and the bridge had been closed ever since. Caltrans was working to open one lane for the upcoming Memorial Day weekend, but it wasn't open yet. Maybe tomorrow. Together, these two closures meant that I wouldn't get to ride about 50 miles of the most beautiful coastal road in the country. So instead, I took a combination of the PCH where I could, and went inland where I had to. And I found a beautiful winding road I hadn't heard of before that made up for it. After a satisfying bagel sandwich in Santa Barbara, I headed north on the 101, skirting around Vandenberg Military Base and easing towards the coast. Near San Luis Obispo, I was able to get to a stretch of the PCH that followed the ocean from just north of Morro Bay to just before Cambria. It wasn't the Big Sur cliffs, but it was still a pretty ride. Rolling hills, open ocean views, and just enough curves to keep things interesting. A welcome dose of coastline. After that short coastal stretch, I cut inland again, turning right onto Route 45, also known as Green Valley Road. That's when the wind really picked up, and I've got a clip here that shows it. Gusts ripping across the field, bending grass in waves. Route 45 ran along the ridge for a bit, and then dropped down into Green Valley, winding past vineyards and ranches. Dozens of wineries dotted the landscape. It was pretty, with a mix of sweepers and twisties, not too technical. Then it was back to the 101. And from there it was wind, traffic, and semis. All the way to King City. More work than wonder. I stopped for gas in King City, where the wind howled across the flat landscape, and I asked the woman at the gas station if it was always this windy. She barely looked up. Yes. This wasn't the ride I'd hoped for when I sat in my apartment in New York City planning this trip. There had been talk about the Limekiln section being open, but the recent rains had other ideas. And apparently, I needed a reminder that backup routes can still be beautiful and memorable. I turned west onto Carmel Valley Road. It looked pretty twisty on the map, and it was, and it made up for my few hours of highway. Carmel Valley Road wound up and down through sun-drenched hills and tree-covered ridges, past quiet ranches, remote vineyards, and open stretches of California backcountry. For more than 50 miles, it offered almost everything I love about riding: curves, solitude, and scenery. I later learned that it isn't just some side road. It's actually one of the oldest inland routes to the coast. Once used by Spanish settlers and ranchers long before Highway 1 carved its famous line in the cliffs. Even today, Carmel Valley Road feels like a secret. It bends and flows with the land instead of cutting through it. No semis, no crowds. Just me, the hills, a couple of cars, and the occasional hawk overhead. For 90 minutes, it was peaceful. And after battling gusts on the 101, it was exactly the kind of riding I needed. Unhurried, engaging, and quietly spectacular. As I rolled into Carmel, a few raindrops dotted my visor. More mist than rain, really, but just enough to remind me I was back on the coast. I checked into the Carmel Fireplace Inn, dropped my gear, cleaned up, and walked to Flaherty's Seafood Grill. At the bar, a fellow traveler was raving about the Manhattan clam chowder. Now, I'm from Manhattan, and I went to school in New England, and to be honest, I do like both kinds of chowder. I took his advice, added the crab-crusted halibut, and toasted the day with a smile. Some days don't go as planned, but this ride reminded me that detours aren't dead ends. They're just different stories. And this one came with quiet, scenic riding, good food, and a few new friends. As I was researching a quote that fit today's ride, I came across this one by philosopher Martin Buber. All journeys have secret destinations, of which the traveler is unaware. Today reminded me of just how true that is. Tomorrow, I head over on a short ride to Cupertino, where I'll be staying with Donette's brother Scott for a few days over Memorial Day weekend. Then on Tuesday, he's going to join me, riding in his car, as we head north together along the coast for a few days. I'm really looking forward to it. Thanks for watching. Until the next ride, be safe, be curious, and keep meandering.